Welcome to Sports Tonight, everybody. I'm sports producer Scott Pennyman, joined by the sports director, the sports director, Bailey Burmaster. Bailey,
What's
it's the
up?
first time me and doing a show together.
I
Man.
know, and we kind of have a little bit of a history. We know of each other before we've actually worked together. You spent some time in Cleveland. I just came here from Cleveland. You are a beloved Cleveland Browns,
Yeah.
Cavs,
Yeah.
Guardians
Yep.
fan, the
Yep.
whole 10 yards. I am not a fan, but I covered them. So we had a little bit of paths crossing.
It's a lot of we've had a lot of rough Sundays, haven't we? I mean, if you're if
You
covered
have.
the-
You have.
I'm a Browns fan. You covered the Browns. We've covered a whole lot of losing, for a long time. So
And chaos. The Browns bring nothing but chaos and losing.
chaos and anybody who's ever watched this show before, everybody knows I'm here. I cover Atlanta sports. I love Atlanta sports, but of course I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm a Cleveland sports fan, like you said. You covered Cleveland sports, so you've had a front row seat to as much misery as I have, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. I would say at this point, chaos is my middle name. I've covered it all in Lubbock when Cliff Kingsbury was fired, and he
yeah.
failed upward to Arizona somehow. And then I went to the Packers and covered Aaron Rodgers, who
good
they
quarterback.
drafted Jordan Love, and he was not happy about that. And then the following draft, he said he was unhappy with the organization and wanted to leave. And then I went to the Browns and covered them. And let's see, Baker Mayfield tore his labrum, and they dished him away to Carolina. And then they brought in Deshaun Watson, who isn't problematic at all.
Yeah, so now you've seen a lot of different quarterback situations, right? So now you're going to deal with the Falcons quarterback situation with Desmond Ridder. So you've seen a lot, huh? You've seen really good quarterbacks. You've seen questionable quarterbacks. You've seen coaches fail up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you kind of see it all, but you're able to pull from a lot. When you cover quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, even people ask, was Patrick Mahomes as good in college? He was. The Texas Tech Red Raiders just weren't great. But you could see the greatness in Mahomes. So it's interesting when you compare that to other quarterbacks, whether that's, Baker Mayfield or whoever, whether it's Jordan Love or, there's a point where Deshaun Kaiser a bit from his time with the Browns and he was a backup with the Packers and he was pretty awful in preseason. There's just total difference in caliber of quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, I'll tell you what welcome back to Atlanta, I guess I should say,
thank
Bailey.
you.
So you're actually the hometown person here. So, hey, we just talked about a lot of bad quarterbacks. So let's talk about a college team that seemingly doesn't even need a good quarterback to win. How about UGA, right? So Kirby Smart, SEC Media Day today, SEC Media Days. So Kirby, he's asked about, it's been a big topic all offseason, right? I mean, they've talked about UGA's schedule and they've talked about, they're just going to run through this thing. So Kirby Smart's like, yeah, if you think our schedule is soft, how about you come play it then? Do you blame Kirby for getting maybe a little bit defensive?
I mean, what is he supposed to say? Yeah, it's super easy. And then what happens if they lose one game and the town burns down? He's saying the right thing. Let's be completely honest, but let's also not defer from the fact it is a soft schedule. Let's be real. They travel less than any other team in the SEC. On top of that, you probably aren't facing a ranked opponent until the back half, and that's Tennessee?
This is true. Yeah. So wait a minute here. You trying to tell me, Bailey, that you don't think UT Martin is a tough football game? Come on.
I'm not.
Hey, look.
I'm not even budging. I'm not even budging to anything like that. Absolutely not.
When you step out there against UT Martin,
No.
they've had several greats like.
It's not moving the meter.
Yeah, right.
Come on now. Come on now.
Then Ball State, all right?
Whew.
Ball State.
However will they get through that?
They can upset you. You know what I'm saying? But, all right, so real. They're not really going to face an opponent that they can actually lose to. If you want to call them that, I'm not going to call South Carolina that. They're not going to lose to South Carolina at home. And so they start the season.
No. And who's South Carolina's quarterback? The guy who transferred from Oklahoma?
Spencer Rattler,
yeah,
right?
he's not great either.
Yeah,
he's
supposed
overrated.
to be all-world. But
he's overrated. This is what Sports Tonight is for, right?
My
trash opinions.
Well, no, Spencer, he was a guy who came in with a lot of hype. He was on that QB1 show on Netflix too, right?
Yeah, and he was arrested or something or got kicked out of school. He got kicked out of school. That's what it was. And they didn't dive into it. But here's my thing. If you can't find success at Oklahoma, of course you're going to go to a school like South Carolina.
That's a shot at Spencer Rattler, that's a shot at South Carolina. You ain't playing, man. You coming out throwing them. You know, that's cool.
Am I wrong?
No, you're right though.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
I didn't look. I didn't watch Spencer Rattler at any point in the last year or so and think that he was a really good quarterback. I mean, at Oklahoma, he looked like he was a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then in South Carolina, I mean, you've never really seen what they projected as being one of the best quarterbacks, a guy who's going to be a future first-round pick. He's kind of fizzled out a little bit, right? And then, so I would say when you look at UGA's schedule, you don't really see a game that they could possibly lose until September 30th, which is at Auburn.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a game that they're going to lose, but when you start talking about the realm of possibility, that's the first game that you could possibly see them having trouble with.
Possibly, even somewhat. And even then, I think you could go to, maybe Florida?
And
then after that, it's Tennessee. But after that, you get through that. I mean, we're talking, and that's if those teams continue on as they're continuing on. They could potentially reach an SEC championship, and that's the first time they're really seeing any type of true competition.
You're probably right. So it's probably going to be Alabama in that SEC championship game. I'm assuming it's going to be Alabama waiting there for them, right? Just because they're Alabama. But, yeah, I think we understand why people have had that opinion about UGA. But you know what? To an extent, though, let's be real. Most of these big-time schools like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, they don't have a lot of haymakers on their schedule early. I mean, games that they could actually lose, right?
No. And, something I will bring up that Kirby Smart said today, which I really liked, was, they're not even worried about the three-peat, which I don't think they are. You can't think that far ahead. Yeah. But he said we don't want to get complacent. And I think what he really means by that is they've had a successful formula for so many years now that you don't want to get complacent in your daily routine and let it become mundane, so to speak, because then these athletes aren't going to be as in tuned and passionate. So it's really just not getting complacent. And I thought he did a good job of delivering that message today at SEC Media Days.
That's facts. I mean, Kirby is a master motivator, right? I mean, he's won 2 straight national championships. I'm not ready to say that he's yet supplanted Nick Saban as the best head coach in college football, but I mean, he's right there. I mean, they're right there close to that same level, which makes sense because he coached under Nick Saban, so he's kind of like a junior Nick Saban. So I just wanted to glance real quick at just a random football team schedule throughout the country, a random powerhouse, right? So I put up Ohio State. That's who UGA beat last year in the playoffs in a great, for all intents and purposes, that was the national championship game, honestly.
Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, they missed a field goal.
Right.
Is that a sensitive subject?
Or else,
should I whisper that?
If he makes that field goal, Ohio State wins that game, right? So look at their schedule, Ohio State's schedule this year. They start at Indiana.
Okay.
The Penguins of Youngstown State, Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, and they don't play a reasonable game, a game that they can reasonably lose until the 4th game of the season against Notre Dame. So, that's kind of when you look at these big-time team schedules, that's mostly what you're going to get,
But I also think it comes down to conference, too, and I'm not necessarily, the SEC is the best conference, but it's definitely, I think, a harder conference than what the Big Ten is. The Big Ten usually beats each other up a little bit more than I would say the SEC, at least the top dogs within those conferences do.
You're not one of those people who falls into the SEC as king and everyone else is...
No, but I don't think we should open that right now.
Oh, okay. We got plenty of time.
Maybe we'll tease that for another episode of Sports Tonight.
Okay, well, we're going to dig into that when we get down the road, all right? So... Let's talk some football and some guys who really need some TLC, man. So running backs in the National Football League, right? It's been this week where guys were seeking long-term contract extensions, right? You have Saquon Barkley with the Giants. You have Josh Jacobs with the Raiders. They were 2 guys that were really seeking long-term deals. They didn't achieve those. I think I saw a stat where it said the last multi-year extension of more than $10 million per season signed by a running back was Nick Chubb in Cleveland.
Yep. So let's say this. Saquon Barkley is the only one out of those 3 guys that even deserved to be re-signed, in my opinion. He is the Giants' offense, and he has been pivotal to their offense. The other two I'm not totally sold on, and I think Nick Chubb is warranted. I don't think the running back position in the NFL is necessarily being devalued. I think, if anything, there's just an overabundance of running backs who can get the job done. The Falcons are a perfect example of that. You have younger talent who can get the run game going. They're plentiful. So do you really need to pay the big bucks for this one superstar running back? And I think that goes back to the age-old question, do you pay them? And teams are realizing, no, we don't necessarily have to. And so I don't want to say it's discrediting guys' abilities and devaluing the position. I just think how people view the position has evolved because of how plentiful running backs are these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is true, and I will add on to this part too. So I think a lot of it is, look how many running backs in the past received contract extensions and how many big contract extensions. I'm talking guys like Todd Gurley. I mean, just in recent history. I'm not going back too far, but guys like Todd Gurley, guys like, I even go back as far as like Sean Alexander when he had a huge season in Seattle and he got a contract extension. You almost never get the same production after a contract extension as you do before, right? I mean, so I think that has really hurt a lot of backs who are looking down the road for their contracts, because when you look back at guys, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it seems like a lot of running backs don't seem to run as hard. I know it's a lot of wear and tear on a lot of these guys' bodies, so I know that plays a role too, but it even seems like a lot of these guys just don't run as hard after they get that money too. It's almost like, even a guy who he got a contract extension a few years back, Alvin Kamara, right? He's been nowhere near as productive after that contract extension as he was before. And I watched him play a couple times last year. He didn't look like he was too eager to scratch ahead for more yards. So it just kind of makes me wonder, too, and Todd Gurley. I mean, he totally fell apart after he got his money. So I think when you look at a lot of these running backs who have gotten paid, they haven't done any favors to the future running backs because they really just fall apart once they get their money. I don't know if that's coincidence or is that their bodies, or do they really stop trying hard? I don't know.
I do think something that's interesting that would be interesting to dive into more. I look at a running back who also got a recent extension a few years back, Aaron Jones with the Green Bay Packers. But he's a different type of running back. Yes, he's your generic running back, but he's also used in the pass catching game a lot. And I'm intrigued to see how many running backs will become more of a Swiss Army knife, so to speak, on like as an offensive weapon in the game. Maybe what we see with Bijan Robinson with the Falcons a little bit, because then maybe you have more validity to pay those type of players because they're not only doing one type of thing, and we can draft another one or pick another one up, or just go get someone who's younger, essentially.
Right. Yeah, I think when you look at the backs who generally do get paid, like I know Alvin Kamara got an extension, I mentioned him. Christian McCaffrey as well.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, he's just a great football player. Right?
He played quarterback, right? He was ready to play quarterback for the 49ers, wasn't it, after Brock Purdy went down?
Yeah. I forgot about that. You're right. He did come in and play quarterback.
But he catches the ball, he runs the ball, he really can do it all.
Right, and I think that's what you have to be. I think you hit on a good point there. I think you have to be a Swiss Army knife. I think teams are going to have to see your value in a lot of different ways outside of just gone are the days where you're going to give a guy a ball 25 times a game. He's going to plow forward, and he's going to do that for 6 or 7 years. And then, no, I think that's over. I think teams need to see your multiple value, and I think that's a better way of maybe getting, like you just mentioned, Bijan Robinson. If he can run the ball, he'll catch the ball, even if he return kicks. So if you can use him in 3 or 4 different ways, I think it makes it more of a guy like Austin Eckler. I think there's guys out there like that who you can use in a lot of different ways, and I think that's the way some of these backs are going to have to go. But I guess a guy like Saquon Barkley can make the argument too. Hey, he's using a lot of different ways.
There are caveats, I feel like, to it, and I am intrigued to see what happens with a guy like Nick Chubb because he's worth every penny, and he's pivotal to that offense. Even though they have Deshaun Watson and the Browns are probably going to air it out more this year, he's still going to be a crucial guy to open up that game plan for them.
Yeah, but, I even think about that, too, because obviously I watch a lot of Browns games, right? So Nick Chubb, as great as he is, right? He's a guy, he signed a little, a 3-year extension
3
a few years ago. So for as great as Nick Chubb is, I remember a few seasons ago, they played I want to say it was a Thursday night game at Denver. Nick Chubb was out. Kareem Hunt was out. And Dearness Johnson stepped in and ran for like 160 yards that night.
That was a Thursday night football game against the Broncos.
Exactly. So I think when you look at that, you go, well, gee, is this more about Nick Chubb being a great back, or is this more about Saquon Barkley being a great back, or is it more about the guys blocking for him? Because if the number 3 guy could step in there and have a huge game the way Nick Chubb's third string back did, and I'm sure that's not the only example of backup guys stepping in and running well, I think that probably devalues you a little bit too. I'm just saying, you know.
I agree with you. It's interesting. I feel like you could always make an argument for any of it, and that is why the question of should you pay a running back or not will always be relevant in the NFL.
I think it's just pretty much going to follow the same cycle. You're going to draft a guy for 4 or 5 years. He'll be under contract. As soon as that contract is up, you'll franchise him for a year or two, and by that time, he'll probably be so broken down that he won't be worth a contract extension, and then you'll rinse and repeat. You'll draft another one, you know.
Yep.
I think that's, unfortunately for those guys, where we're headed. So let's talk some hoops, right? So you watch the Hawks a little bit. So Trae Young, right? I mean, so it's kind of been talked about around here and just kind of basketball circles that maybe they were looking at Trae Young as being kind of a coach killer because he's had a couple guys over him. And then, you know, there's a lot of people who feel like he was responsible for Nate McMillan's exit as a head coach. And so the reputation was starting to form around Trae that maybe he wasn't the most coach-friendly player. So, you know, he was recently on Uninterrupted. They had a big sort of, you know, a special Draymond Green show from a Uninterrupted event. And so he's on Draymond Green's podcast, and he's been interviewed, and he basically says that he wants their current coach, Quinn Snyder, to be his Steve Kerr. He hopes that he can be that head coach that he can be with for many years and win multiple championships with. And is that something that you can really even see?
Listen, I think Trae Young's forgetting that this is a team sport. Listen, Quinn Snyder is a great coach. I covered Donovan Mitchell, who obviously played with Snyder in Utah, and I can tell you countless times Donovan would continually talk about Quinn Snyder and his relationship and how great of a coach he is. So I think bringing Quinn Snyder in was huge and a part of, okay, we're going to find out if it's a Trae thing or if it was really a coach thing. But also on top of that, this roster is the struggle. It's not Trae Young. It's not the head coach. It's the overall roster. I mean, they're trying to dish it to just get rid of money at this point, which is never a good sign. But I think what the Hawks are banking on a lot with their team is that they're hoping Quinn Snyder is going to develop a lot of these younger guys and they're going to become more role players that they need. And that's a tall task to add. So I don't know, you know, players are always going to talk positively and want those championships, and that's the ultimate goal, right? But I think there's a lot more to this of, I hope Quinn Snyder's the fix-all, be-all to what the Hawks' issues are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody in the NBA, right? I mean, there's some leagues that you look at, and a coach can come in and sort of just clean things up, right? I mean, in football, you know, you hear that a lot when a new great coach comes in college football and stuff. Basketball is a little different because basketball, more than any other league, is a players' league, right? So I think that Quinn's relationship with Trae Young is going to be the biggest thing, right?
Yep.
I think that when you think about, I know when I was growing up, you know, Michael Jordan was kind of struggling to get past the Pistons teams, and then Phil Jackson came in, and I don't think it was so much about what Phil Jackson did from an X's and O's standpoint. I think he was able to communicate well with Michael Jordan. I think he was able to communicate well with Scottie Pippen and able to get those guys on the same page. Phil, about a decade later, did the same thing with the Lakers, where he was able to get Shaq and Kobe on the same page, and they were able to win a lot of championships. So I think that's going to be what you're going to look for from Quinn Snyder as he's looking for him to be his next Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr also did a lot of those same things in Golden State when Golden State couldn't get over the hump for a while.
Well, it's also getting the pieces.
Exactly. I mean, so, yeah. So
Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, eventually Kevin Durant.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it helps to have a Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, don't it?
Just saying. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess you have to ask yourself first. Number one right now, do the Hawks have all the pieces in place?
Yep.
Then if they do have the pieces in place.
And you know what? To give Atlanta credit, some of those pieces are your star player. Some of those pieces are the right head coach. But there are more pieces.
Yeah, I don't think. Look, I mean, to your point, I don't think anyone looks at this Hawks roster right now and says this is a finished product. I mean, they have everything that they need to go win. No, I don't think they're there yet. But I think you're hoping that it probably starts with Trae Young. It starts with him and DeJounte Murray and those guys. And so I think they're hoping that maybe Quinn Snyder can help Trae and DeJounte. Maybe he can be their Stephen Clay. I know that's a stretch, right? But I think that's the thinking when Trae's talking about maybe he can be my guy to.
And I think that's the developmental part of Quinn Snyder too. I mean, they're banking on that big time, and it's going to be, you got to give time for that, but also how much time.
So you say you've heard good things about Quinn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess, like you said, you were up there with Donovan, so
yeah.
He's about as close to Quinn as anybody in the NBA as far as guys who will play with him the
Correct.
most. So yeah. So hey, we'll see how that goes, man. Look, I mean, the Hawks are kind of, I wouldn't consider them to be like a mess. But I mean, they need some direction. Whether they're a team who's kind of in the middle, right? I mean, they haven't been good enough to contend for a championship. They haven't been at the bottom of the league. They're just kind of blah. They're kind of in the middle.
This is what I'll say, especially about NBA postseason.
Yeah.
We kind of realized regular season really doesn't matter. The playoffs are what really matter. And if you can't get out of the first round, you're kind of still irrelevant.
Yeah.
I hate that way of thinking. I absolutely hate that way of thinking. But that is the absolute truth of what we've seen play out the last few years.
That's facts. Yeah. I don't have much of a rebuttal because.
Wow, we're agreeing on a lot.
No. Because look. Well, okay. So here's what I will say to an extent. Because I have heard people say over the year. And this year is a really bad example.
It is a really bad
example. You
got
a number 7 and number 8 team that made the conference finals. But generally speaking, though, you're not going to transform from being a really good regular season or just an average regular season team to championship caliber come playoff time, right? So I think it starts with building habits and consistency. So when we say the NBA regular season doesn't mean anything, I think it's not too literal, right? Because generally speaking, from year to year, you're not going to see a team that barely makes the playoffs win an NBA title, right? I mean, so you normally develop those habits within the season. You become a winning team, and then like the Denver Nuggets this year, they were number 1 seed, best team all season long. They won a championship, right? I mean, there's normally no surprises come NBA playoff time, So,
but also Jokic was playing lights out literally all season.
Yeah, I mean, so they look like the most polished team the entire season, and they went ahead and won the championship. But there was some outliers this year because the Lakers, number 7 seed, Heat, number 8 seed, they went further than many people expected. So yeah, but I think the Hawks in general, I think they have to develop just overall continuity, overall consistency, game in and game out, and then maybe they can get to where they want to be, right?
Absolutely.
So finally, let's talk about our boy Justin Fields, right? Justin Fields, Harrison High School, from Kennesaw around here, right? So he's entering a crucial stretch. This is like his 3rd season now in the NFL. So Justin Fields said that he thinks right now, he's already a top 5 running quarterback in the history of the NFL. Are you buying that? Because I don't know if I am.
He's talented. And he's probably top 10, like logistically, if you actually looked at what he's done. However, I hate even saying that because he is so young in his career in the NFL, and he plays for the Bears, who are historically trash. Well, not historically trash, but the last couple of years trash. I covered the NFC North.
Dying. I got Miles over there dying, man.
I know the NFC North a little enough to know that it hasn't been pretty.
A lot of trash over there.
It's a lot of trash. A lot of trash. But and I don't think he's top 5 like he thinks he is.
He says top 5 running. He says that when it comes to running, I mean, so I'm looking at all of the best running quarterbacks that I can ever remember.
Number 1 is Vic, right?
So.
Oh, no. Okay.
I wonder if number 1 right now, just a guy who I feel like has to Planet Michael Vick, is Lamar Jackson.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if yet. I think it's close.
Vick is my guy. Look, I mean, that's a line of royalty right there, Michael Vick. I mean, that's you still see people in Michael Vick jerseys. But Lamar Jackson runs like, I mean, he don't even run like a quarterback. Lamar Jackson runs the ball like a wide receiver or running back, and he doesn't seem to mind taking tackles. It's probably going to hurt him in the long run, but he doesn't mind taking tackles. I mean, he runs the ball. I mean, they pretty much have plays where it's just take the ball, and he's not doing nothing but running it. And I think he's got like 1,000 yards a couple seasons in a row, right? Yeah, I mean, that's close between him and Vick. I mean, that's...
Vick is my number one still.
Okay. So either way, we still have Vick and Lamar ahead of Justin Fields, right? So I'm just thinking about some of the other good running quarterbacks.
Yeah, who else do we want to argue?
So I got some pulled up here, just so I don't have to go totally from the top of my brain.
Okay. Yeah.
So
share with the class.
Yeah. So we have guys like Steve Young.
Yeah.
He was a hell of a scrambling quarterback. So is John Elway. Russell Wilson. Steve McNair, he was a great runner of the football.
Steve McNair was good.
Yeah.
What about Cam Newton?
Cam Newton.
Recent years.
Donovan McNabb. So that's really hard to call yourself top 5 already. And Colin Kaepernick.
I think you said it best already. He's still so young in the NFL.
I agree.
It's too soon to be talking like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with
like,
you too.
Who was it? Was it Scottie Pippen who said, the difference between Michael Jordan and LeBron James is Michael Jordan never had to tell you how great he was.
That's true.
I think that is
some bad stuff lately?
I think that is so true to like star athletes and superstars. If you're really good, your work is going to speak for itself and people will do the talking for you. And that's kind of where maybe Justin Fields could have taken that here and been like, you know what? Let's see where I'm at the end of my career.
Yeah, that's true. And I think overall, too, I mean, I know he was just talking about from a running standpoint, but he hasn't really played great quarterback since he's been in the league. I mean, that's the one thing that he has done well is run the football, but he still has to get down pat his ability to throw the ball. So I think that's something moving forward that he'll have to work on, right? I mean, but I think he has confidence. I think we all know that he can run the football. So, look, I don't think he's a top 10 running quarterback of all time. I think Vick was better. I think Lamar Jackson's better. I think Cam Newton was a better runner.
Yep.
I even think guys like Steve McNair and guys like that were better running quarterbacks. So I don't think he's cracked that top 5 yet of running quarterbacks. But look, I think that his focus probably needs to be more so let's improve as a passer too, because when you look at the great quarterbacks in the game right now, most of those guys can do both. Patrick Mahomes, even Joe Burrow. I mean, he's a pretty solid runner too, but obviously he can throw the football. Josh Allen. Your elite level quarterbacks can run and throw with the football. So I don't care what he thinks he is as a running quarterback until Justin Fields learns to improve in a passing game and do what his true job was, which is to throw the football, then I don't think we're ever going to be putting him in that elite category. Like I'm saying, I mean, I'm pretty sure that his aspirations are to get on a Russell Wilson level, get on a Pat Mahomes level. Well, I don't know if anybody's getting on a Pat Mahomes level, but get closer to that sort of level. I think that's where he wants to be, but in order to be that, he needs to be that as a passer as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to write him off yet. I'll give him time.
No.
I just think it's too early to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't think nobody's going to write him off yet. I think he has a long way to go. So we'll see if Atlanta native and Harrison High star, former Harrison High star, Justin Fields can evolve. This is a big year for him. This is a big year for him right here, because if it doesn't happen for him this year, they have a sort of like a new front office and look, if he doesn't make it happen this year up in Chicago, I think they're going to look to replace him next offseason. I think it would have been this offseason. They were drafting number 1. They traded that pick having confidence in him to give him a chance to prove that he is what he says he is. Now it's time to go do it on the field, right? So, Bailey, it's our final segment called What's on Your Mind. It could be anything in the world of sports.
So,
right? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I don't know why all the quarterback talk got me on this. So for people who don't know, there was a time period in like Georgia high school football where all these schools started making their own music videos, like hype music videos. Like there's one called Brookwood, Where You At? There was one for Grayson High School. There was one for Alpharetta. And Josh Dobbs was in the Alpharetta one. And he was with the Steelers for a bit, eventually ended up with the Browns. And I had to ask him about this before I moved here, because I don't know how many people like know about these relevant YouTube videos. And he's featured it in it. And I asked him, does everyone ever give him crap in the locker room for like they basically like rap, and he says Josh Dobbs, and he flexes his muscles,
Right.
and he looks like this scrawny little high school kid, because he is. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, why did you bring that up?" And I don't know, all the quarterback talk got me thinking about that. And if you haven't seen him, you should go Google, look him up on YouTube. They're pretty funny.
That's cool. Josh Dobbs, man. He's a guy who's hung around the league a little bit, started for some teams. So, hey, Brett giving us the wrap. So, I'm going to respect Brett's wishes here and wrap this show up. Bailey, show 1 of our time here. It's been a lot of fun. We got a lot more to go.
Yes, we do.
All right, Bailey. See you guys tomorrow.